never thought I'd be writing here. I always thought these reports were exaggerated, pure fiction. But after what I experienced, I just wanted to find a space where I could put this out there. My name is Daniel Reed. I was just a regular guy trying to make it in life. I lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Normal job, normal life. Or, at least, it was until a year ago. It all started on one of those nights that are too hot, you know? When the heat doesn't let up, even after midnight, and you feel like the air is sticking to your skin. I was at rock bottom. My business was sinking, debts were knocking on the door, and my wife had left me 2 months before. Nothing was going right. So, on that moonless night, I decided to do something that would change everything. I ended up in a rundown bar in the city center. Those bars that seem to exist outside of time, full of silent people, low light, and a smell of cigarettes impregnated in the walls. It was there that I met Paul Mercer. He approached as if he already knew me. To calm a look, small smile, dressed in an old suit that seemed to be from another era. I don't know why, but I felt that he knew everything about me. My failures, my debts, my desire to simply disappear. We talked for a while, and he went straight to the point. "You want a way out, don't you?" I don't remember answering, but he continued, almost as if he were reading my thoughts. That's when he slid an old book across the table. The cover was leather, cracked by time, with symbols that I didn't recognize. Paul said that the answer was in that book, that I could have everything back. Success, fortune, respect, but that everything has a price. In that state, screwed, desperate, I accepted. He explained what to do. A simple ritual, according to him. Some candles, a circle drawn on the floor, the right words. Nothing I hadn't already seen in a movie. But that night, when I returned to my apartment and sat on the cold floor with the book open, everything seemed different. Real, the black candles flickering, the silence outside too heavy, sweat running down even with the fan on. I drew that strange symbol on the floor, my hands trembling, and turned off all the lights. When I started reciting those words, my voice seemed to get lost in the air. The atmosphere became dense, as if the air had gotten thicker. I thought nothing would happen, but it was when I closed the book and looked at the corner of the room that I felt it. A shadow. It had no face, no clear shape, just a dark, dense outline, standing in the corner, as if it had always been there and I had only noticed it now. It didn't speak with its mouth, but I heard, inside my head, that voice. Wasn't a normal voice. It was deep, distant, almost slurred. It knew exactly what I wanted. I didn't need to explain. Money, power, a new chance. Everything seemed so simple. It offered me that, in exchange for something that, at that moment, I didn't understand. I said yes before I even thought about it. After that, the heat disappeared. The air became light, and the shadow disappeared. The next day, my phone rang early. It was an old customer with a proposal. After that, another call, and another. In a week, my business was running again. The bills began to be paid. Money flowed like never before. My apartment, once empty and stuffy, seemed full of life. I even bought a new car. But along with all this, something changed. I started to see the shadow in the corners of the room. In the bathroom mirror, reflected in the window while I was driving. Always there, motionless, observing. And that's when I realized that, in that book, there were no instructions on how to get out of the deal. I don't know why I decided to tell this now. Maybe because last night, while returning home, I stopped at a red light, and across the street I saw Paul Mercer. He was there, standing under the weak light of the lamppost. Same clothes, same small smile, staring at me. And before the light changed, he raised a hand, as if waving, and said something that I could hear as a whisper. He always collects his debts. When I looked in the rearview mirror, he had disappeared. Since then, I can't sleep anymore. Every time I turn off the lights, I feel like he's in the corner of the room, waiting. I know that, sooner or later, he's coming to get what's his. Untellable, a pact with an entity that appeared in the form of a shadow. He gave me everything I wanted: money, respect, a comfortable life. But no one talks about what comes after. The first weeks were amazing. My business taking off, calls and proposals coming out of nowhere, as if someone had unlocked my luck. I thought I had come out winning. Naive, right? It was only when the nights began to drag on that I realized my mistake. It all started with the mirrors. At first, silly things. I would catch my reflection, swear that it moved kind of out of time. Later, the details became clearer. I saw myself passing through the living room, but in the reflection, someone was still standing in the hallway. Always that shadow, motionless, watching. I started avoiding the mirrors, only it didn't help. I started seeing it in other surfaces. Car windows at night, dark shop windows, even on the turned-off TV screen. No matter where I looked, always there in the corner of my eye. And the strangest thing, every time it got late at night, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., I heard a sound coming from the hallway of my apartment, as if something was dragging its feet on the carpet. Slow, soft. When I got up to see, empty. I thought it was stress, insomnia. I started taking sleeping pills, but they didn't prevent the dreams. Every night, the same thing. I was standing in the middle of an empty field, without stars, without light, only that shadow in the distance, without face, without shape, just watching. But the worst wasn't that. The worst was when I realized that, in the morning, upon waking up, I started to see the field in the reflections too, as if the dream hadn't ended. I tried to ignore it, convince myself that it was just paranoia. But one night, something happened that I couldn't explain anymore. It was Friday. I had spent the whole day in the office, trying to keep my head busy. I returned home late. The clock was already striking almost midnight. When I parked, something caught my attention in the rearview mirror. Paul Mercer, standing on the sidewalk, watching me. Same old suit, same restrained smile. But there was something different in his eyes. As if he knew that I wasn't sleeping anymore. As if he was enjoying it. I kept staring for seconds that seemed like an eternity. And when I blinked, he disappeared. I knew I needed to do something. Standing still, waiting for things to get worse, wasn't an option. That's when I remembered a guy that an acquaintance mentioned years ago, Marcus Bishop. They said he was an occultist, a medium, someone who knew how to deal with problems out of the ordinary. He lived in an old house in the outskirts of Lafayette, isolated, people who didn't like to be found. The next morning, I got in the car and drove there. The road seemed endless, surrounded by forests and empty fields, as if I was already crossing into another world. When I arrived, the house was exactly what I imagined. Small, secluded, surrounded by trees, old boards creaking on the porch. There was a smell of dry grass and smoke in the air. I knocked on the door, nervous. I was about to explain to a complete stranger that I had made a pact with a shadow. He opened it before I even knocked a second time. Marcus was a thin, grey-haired man with deep-set and two calm eyes, as if he already knew who I was. Daniel read, right. I didn't ask how he knew. He let me in without saying anything else. The inside of the house was simple, but full of strange details. Symbols carved in wood, melted candles in every corner, jars with dark liquids. It seemed like a place where time had stopped. We sat down and, for the first time, I told someone everything. From the ritual in the apartment to the shadow in the reflections, the dreams, and Paul Mercer. Marcus listened without interrupting. He didn't seem surprised. When I finished, he was silent for a while, as if calculating something. Pacts like yours, he began, in that low voice, aren't easy to undo. He said that entities like that don't like to release what they consider their property. That it doesn't matter if you gained money or success. The pact wasn't just for what I asked for. It was for what I didn't yet know I had given. My soul, of course, but also my freedom, if it continues the way it is. He said, at some point, you will stop dreaming, because you will already be on the other side without realizing it. I was silent, trying to process that. I asked if there was any way to reverse it. Marcus looked at me seriously. To break, no, but maybe, to renegotiate. He explained that these entities respond to exchange. Nothing is given for free, but you can try to offer something of greater value. When I asked what, he answered me bluntly, other souls. My stomach turned. He continued, but be careful. A renegotiation is always risky. You may end up worse than you started. Before I left, Marcus gave me a warning. He will test you. Before accepting any new proposal, he will push until you break. Pay attention to the signs. I returned home with my head spinning. That night, I tried not to look in the mirrors. I left all the lights on, but at 2:37 a.m., I woke up with a jolt from a sound coming from the living room. The footsteps dragged heavy. I went there slowly, with my heart beating like a drum, and I saw it. In the window of my apartment, reflected in the glass, the shadow was there, but not stopped. It was closer, more defined. This time, I managed to distinguish something that I had never seen before. A smile, weak, crooked, stitched in the dark. And for the first time, I understood that it knew that I was looking for a way out. And he wasn't going to let it go cheap. After the visit to the occultist Marcus Bishop, my life turned into a conscious nightmare. He said that there was a chance, a dangerous one, to renegotiate my contract, but the price would be other souls. I didn't want to believe it. I thought that, maybe, there was a cleaner solution. But the shadow wasn't going to wait for me to find an easy way out. The following weeks were a blur of paranoia. The reflections no longer lied. They weren't just shadows in mirrors or windows. Now, I saw the shadow everywhere. Behind people on the street, sitting next to strangers in the cafe. As if it was always close, waiting patiently. Sometimes, in the corner of my eye, it seemed to have grown. It had arms that were too long, and that stitched smile was always there. I left all the lights on at night, but that didn't stop the footsteps. The dragged ones. The sound came from the hallway, from the ceiling, from the bedroom door, and then came the phone calls. Always from unknown numbers. When I answered, all I heard was heavy breathing, or a whisper, "You owe me." I went back to Marcus one last time. I was exhausted, not sleeping properly for weeks, and with the constant feeling that, at any moment, something would pull me to the other side without warning. "Do you still want to renegotiate?" was all he asked, looking at me with that disconcerting calm. I didn't want to admit it, but yes, I was willing to do anything to get rid of that presence. He explained the ritual. It wouldn't be like the first time. This time, I would have to bring it completely to this side, without veils, without shadows in the corner. It would come, and it would demand something in return. Marcus made it clear, if you fail, there will be no second chance. The ritual was scheduled for a moonless night, far from the city, in an abandoned warehouse in the middle of the swamp. I was trembling the whole time. The air was dense, heavy, with the smell of wet earth and rust. Marcus prepared the circle on the floor, black candles around, strange symbols painted in red. In the center, a grotesque totem, part animal, part humanoid, hollow eyes, twisted horns. He began to chant the words in a language I didn't understand. The wind outside stopped, and then everything became absolutely silent, until I felt it. The shadow appeared in the corner of the warehouse. This time, it wasn't just a blur. It had shape. 2 tall arms, too long, skin seeming made of solid smoke. In place of the face, only that wide stitching, smiling. It didn't speak with its mouth, but the voice came directly into my head, like a heavy echo. Daniel, the time has come. My legs almost gave way. Marcus looked at me, signaling that it was my turn. I took a deep breath and spoke. I want to renegotiate. The shadow didn't respond immediately. It just tilted its head slightly, watching. The smile never changing. I have something better to offer, I continued. Other souls, I can bring you more. The silence that came after was like a physical weight on me. The shadow advanced a step, and I felt the air freeze. You think you can bargain, it seemed, amused. But at the same time, something in its voice was cutting. You have no idea what you've already given. My heart was pounding. I tried to keep my voice firm. Give me time. I can open doors for you. Influential people, powerful. I can bring more than you imagine. The shadow stood still. For a second, everything seemed suspended. Then it spoke again, and the words cut me deeper than any knife. You don't understand, Daniel. I already have you. I always have. From the moment you accepted, what you want to offer is already mine. My stomach sank. Marcus didn't say a word. He just watched. The shadow took another step, now almost inside the circle, but it leaned in, almost as if whispering directly into my ear. You can serve me, not to save your soul. That is already gone, but to take more with me. It explained, without haste, almost with pleasure. I would be its face, an emissary. I would have wealth, influence, power, but it would be a door for more pacts, more people dragged into the void, a priest of shadows. At that moment, I knew that there was no escape. The only choice was to serve, or be taken there and then. I accepted. I don't know what else I could have done. And when I said yes, the entity's smile seemed to tear even further across its invisible face. The warehouse became cold. The candles went out on their own, and the shadow disappeared. Marcus looked at me with a strange expression, neither approval nor pity, just acceptance. Now you understand, he said. There is no victory, only survival. It's been 3 years. My life, on the outside, has never been better. Thriving businesses, important people wanting to talk to me. But I know what's behind it. Sometimes, when I shake a hand, close a deal, or look in the mirror, I see this stitched smile in a fleeting glimpse. And I know that it's not just my soul that belongs to it now. It's the whole world that, little by little, is opening the door. And I am the one holding the doorknob. If you think easy wealth comes without a price, remember, when the bill comes, it charges everything. And sometimes, it's not just you who pays.